say that we were kidnapped and brought here. It's true. It's not hate to say that we were Jim Crow, discriminated and segregated. It's true. It's not hate to say that the Supreme Court, which is the highest court in this country, came up with a hypocritical desegregation decision 9 years ago, which they haven't enforced yet. That's not hate. That's true. Quoted as having said when an airliner crashed with a number of white people on board, that you were glad it happened. The white race in this country collectively are guilty of these crimes that our people are suffering from collectively. And therefore they will suffer some collective disaster, collective grief. And when that plane crashed in France with 130 white people off.
No one man should withstand the weight of the world on his shoulders and die when it's over. Ain't no global warming, the world getting colder. Ain't nobody doing shit, they taking our culture. Wake up and see y'all, ain't no balance on one side of the seesaw. We at war with Esau, but ain't nobody down with us. My niggas get up. I know what it's like to wake up fucked up. I know what it's like when the pain cut deep. You can't get on your feet and you just wanna stay asleep. When the shit too much, a nigga needs to roll up. And all you got is this money and this still ain't enough. To live is to survive, gotta hustle and stay alive. My girl don't understand, I can see that look in her eyes. I'm not the troubled soul, I pacify with lies. I inflict the pain and wipe the tears of her cries. Baby, I know you heard an apologies in advance. I just pray to God that he give me another chance. Try to make it to heaven, I got my hell of a plan. Dancing with the devil makes me a hell of a man. Yeah, I'm trying to be a better man, but my nigga down south won't put me up 200 amps. He told me if I did it, he'd put that shit in my hands. Is that a curse or a blessing, or do I see at the end?
We learned that 120 of them were from the state of Georgia, the state that my own grandfather was a slave in. Why, to me, it couldn't have been anything but an act of God, a blessing from God, and I frankly sincerely pray for similar blessings from him.
Levels to this, and I said it like I said. I wanted to hit, I give credit where it's relevant, we better than them. It's evident we set the precedence to elevate men, but we'll never know the end is killing other black men. And how we supposed to trust the hand we eat off? If we hand fed the very poison we feed off, we don't even need all this extra shit they letting us get. It only hold us back from our excellence. Links up, get together, ball, invest in shit, the true value of life. Love my children and wife, love the
What's good? What's good? Shalom, shalom. What's cracking? I know y'all see the title, right? Religion versus the Bible and God versus Christianity, right? So yeah, we're gonna get right into it, right? Oh yeah. So yeah, of course, giving all praises to the Most High God, we do so in His only begotten Son, Yahweh Shai, who the world knows as Jesus Christ, right? So yeah, so we're gonna get into this because going over this topic because it's a misunderstanding. Oftentimes people equate the Bible with religion or equate God with Christianity, and so all we can do is very easy, is look at what Christianity teaches versus what the Bible actually says, and see which one is accurate. Because like I say, what, like, you know, God be true, right? And every man a lie, right? So we're gonna get into it. Oh yeah, let's go to Book of Joshua. Get right into it, right? Um, and of course, this is brought to you by Lost Child Support Checks in the Mail, right? They're going somewhere. So yeah, we're gonna go to Joshua 1 and verse 8. Because we gotta understand what this thing is, right? Because again, we gotta, you know, weigh this thing out because, our salvation and everything is on the line, right? So you want to make sure you're getting everything correct. And so, like I said, so it's important to compare, what we learn to what the actual text says. And a lot of people don't do that, or, a lot of people don't study their religion and see the concept and where it comes from and how it was developed, right? And that's where a lot of confusion comes in. So, excuse me. So, real quick, let's start at 7. Joshua 1 and 7 says, so now, of course, this is Joshua speaking to the Israelites, and he says this: be only strong and very courageous, that thou mayest observe to do according to all the law which Moses my servant commanded thee. Turn not turn not from it to the right hand or left, that thou mayest prosper wherever thou goes. Right. So you talk to the people like, look, the law that Moses gave us, we're gonna keep it, and it's gonna make us prosper and all that cool stuff. So now this is the gist of this whole thing, right? Well, we gotta understand how to understand this book, right? It says this book of the law. So what is the Bible? This book of the law, right? And that's what this thing is. It's filled. The first 5 books is the laws. Then you got the history, right? The prophets, and we always say it's no different if America takes their Constitution and their history of America and consolidate it into one book and say, here, that's what this is. It's the laws of Israel and their history, right? So it says, this book of the law shall not depart from thy mouth, but thou shalt meditate therein day and night. So that's what this book is, the book of law, our Constitution, how we, govern our nation. And it says, day and night thou mayest observe to do all that is written therein, for then thou may make thy way prosperous, and then thou will have good success. Right? So he's saying, like, look, you do this, you're gonna have good success, right? And let's get real quick. Let's get Psalms. Psalms 119 and I think I want 42. And it say this. and start at 42. It says, so shall I have wherewith thou answered him that reproached me, I trust I trust thy word, right? And we got to trust in the word of the Most High, the commandments, the laws that he gave us, and his prophecies. Let thy mercy come. Hold on. Verse 2 says, so shall I have wherewith the answer him that reproached me, for I trust in thy word. And take not the word of truth utter out of my mouth, for I have hope in thy judgment. So shall I keep thy law continually. Right? And because again, this is the book of the law. It says, so I shall keep thy law continually forever and ever. And I will speak, and I will, hold on, read. It says, and I will walk at liberty, for I seek thy precepts. Right? So, and you're supposed to be trying to seek understanding of the scriptures in the word of God. And it says, and I seek thy precepts, and I will speak of thy testimony also before kings, and I will not be ashamed. And that's what we do, right? We speak thy testimony before kings. When we get on these airways and we speak before kings, right? We know the feds is watching. How did Tupac say? The feds is watching, right? You know, don't get on me because that's the only part of that song I remember. But yeah, right? So that's why it says, I will speak thy testimony also before kings. That's what we do. We prophesy God's message. We, bring it out amongst these mighty nations to wake up our people, right? And it's important that we do that. And we see every time we do that, we see judgment pass, right? We see God moves. And as our people is waking up and we turn on the news and we see this is going on. So we see prophecy taking place. Then it says, and I will not be ashamed, and I will delight myself in thy commandments, which I have loved. And that's what we, should do. We should delight ourselves in his commandments, which we have loved, right? And that's the problem. We don't love the commandments because our people want to do what they want, right? That's why it says over here, where it at? Deuteronomy 28 and 47, it says, because thou serve not the Lord thy God with joyfulness. And that's what happened, because God gave us a culture, a heritage, a custom, right? Laws, to live by. And we said, you know what? We want to be like the Philistines. We want to be like the Moabites, all these other surrounding nations that was around us. And instead of us, holding on to our own culture and this, flourishing and keeping that strong, we wanted to be just like everybody else, right? And we the Israelites, because we do it to this day, right? We still do it, but not in that same sense. We do it in the sense of we give our culture away, like our music, right? We have no control over that, right? We produce it, but we have no control over it, right? So the way we dress, the way we, everything, our whole culture is, being pirated by other nations, and we get no benefit off of it, right? So like I said, so it's still happening to this day, just that now the stuff that we, even though like what we call black culture, is stuff that we manufacture since we've been here in the States, but the world still takes that from us, and we seek no benefit in it. Because God says, because thou serve not the Lord with joyfulness and with gladness of heart for the abundance of all things. Because if we had, kept our end of the bargain, keep the law, statutes, and commandments, he will give us all things for abundance of all things. But now, he's like, okay, what did he say? Therefore shalt thou serve thy enemies. So now, instead of we coming to the Lord and seeking the Lord to give us all things, now we have to go get on government assistance, get on, some type of housing thing, some type of this or that, look into their mercy and their, discretion on if they're going to help us or not, right? Depending on other nations' kindness on what they're going to do for us, right? That's what we've been doing. Because it says, because thou serve not the Lord thy God with joyfulness and with gladness of heart, for abundance of all things, therefore thou shalt serve thy enemies, which the Lord thy God shall send against thee. So that's what happened. Through slavery, conquest, right? These other nations began to rule over us, right? And now we're subjugated to these other nations that were scattered to, right? It says, which the Lord thy God shall send against thee in hunger and in thirst, and in nakedness and in want of all things, right? So whatever we want in life, we have to get it from our enemy. And I know a few of us, some of us, a lot of us probably don't even see the harm in that, because we've been doing it for so long, right? This been a way of life. But that's not how it's supposed to be. Like, it's not a problem for Karen and Bob to go to a grocery store and buy their stuff, because that they're supporting their nation, and they're not buying from other nations. But we have to go into these stores and buy from other nations. Think about this 300 years ago. Who had this land 300 years ago, right? Those people have to now go to the people that conquered them to now go to and buy for them, right? That's what they got to do now, right? So, because it says, therefore thou shalt serve thy enemies, which the Lord thy God shall send against thee, in hunger and thirst, and nakedness and want of all things, and he shall put a yoke of iron upon thy neck and destroy thee, right? Hold on, Salakia real quick. Salakia. I like it. So, like I said, so I like it. So, so you have like, we end up in these predicaments where we're serving our enemies because we didn't want to keep the law, statutes, and commandments, right? And that's why David said, "I delight in keeping thy law," right? When we read it. So, where we at? It says, I will delight myself in thy commandments, which I love. My hands will lift up unto thy commandments, which I have loved, and I will meditate in thy statutes, right? And that's what we do. We meditate on these things. We think about it. We try to see how we can, grow and implement these things into our life, right? To improve our lives and how we, treat ourselves and each other, right? Hold on, read it quick. So, yeah, right? So, let's go back over there. Let's go here. So, but again, but this institution we have is teaching us that we don't have to keep the laws of God. All we have to do is Just keep the faith, and that's it, right? But again, you will not read. You cannot go to any part of the prophets or the first 5 books or Christ, the gospel, or nothing where it's telling you not to keep the law, right? And that is, hold on, real quick, turn this down just a little bit. So, so yeah, you won't find like anywhere where in the scriptures where they tell you not to keep the law, right? That goes against God. I mean, like, if we're gonna say let God be true and every man a lie, or we say, what the Bible say, I am the Lord, I change not, right? If that is true, we believe that, then we have to ask some questions when it comes to these religions that we follow, right? Because people are really convinced in their convictions that they're doing what's right. And then when you show them, like, hey, this says this, they be like, nah, the Bible's wrong, pastor's right. So, let's go here. Let's go to Isaiah 66:15. All right, so it says, for behold, the Lord will come with fire, and with his chariots like a whirlwind. Right? So the Most High coming back with fire, right? And what do fire do? Right? Fire is a concentrated energy that heats things, that burns and consumes, right? So he's coming like a consuming fire. Behold, the Lord comes with fire, and his chariots like a whirlwind. Meaning, they're going to be everywhere, right? And it says, and render his anger in fury, and his rebuke with flames of fire, right? So he's coming back pissed off, right? He ain't coming back, laughing and, being all jolly like how they be showing certain pictures and stuff. Like, nah, he's coming back with fire, right? Then it says, for by fire and his sword will the Lord plead with all flesh, right? Meaning he gonna get down and dirty with all these nations, right? He gonna do battle with these people, right? And when it says plead, it don't mean like plead, like, oh, please listen to me. Oh, come on, guys. Like Rodney King had a point. Why can't we all just get along, right? That's not what it's talking about here. It says, for by fire and his sword will the Lord plead with all flesh, right? This is violence we're reading here. And it says, and the slain of the Lord shall be many. So it says the slain of the Lord shall be many. He's coming back cracking necks. That's what he's coming to do, right? He's coming back breaking, 8-town stumping, head chopping, all that stuff is going down, right? And why? It says, they that sanctify themselves. Because that's what a lot of our people do that's in these religion things. They think because they're part of that cult, that, what they're doing is right, And because they don't read this. So it says, they that sanctify themselves and purify themselves, they pray and, they think, we're going to do this little prayer. Everybody gather around and hold hands. We're going to pray, right? Just go outside and stand on this corner, everybody, on this Saturday afternoon and pray in a circle so everybody can see us, right? Then it says, them that sanctify themselves, purify themselves in the garden behind one's tree, in the midst eating swine's flesh. So this is talking about eating pork, right? So we just read about a whole bunch of violence in the last verse. And then the next verse is saying that they that sanctify themselves, purify themselves, meaning they make themselves holy and they, and they think they're doing something righteous and what they're doing, but they're hiding what they're doing because, you got some of our people that's know they shouldn't be eating that stuff, but they eat it anyway. And it says, in the garden behind one's tree, eating swine's flesh and the abomination, meaning all the other stuff that God don't want us to eat, and the mouse. So pig, pork is being in the same level as eating a mouse, right? That's what God is telling you. So some people, a lot of people say, well, hey, I love my pork, right? Let's read this again. Behold, the Lord come with fire, and is cherished like a whirlwind, to render his anger. I love my pork, my shrimp, my crab, my lobster, my catfish, my clam. Behold, the Lord come with fire, with chariots like a whirlwind, to render his anger. But I love my pork. I love it. I love my crab and lobster and all the other nasty stuff that water bugs. To render his anger and fury, and rebuke with flames of fire. For by fire and by his sword will the Lord plead with all flesh. And the slain of the Lord shall be many. But I love my pork and catfish and shrimp buffet stuff. Scampi and all that stuff that people get. I don't know. The Lord plead with all flesh, and the slain of the Lord shall be many. They that sanctify themselves, purify themselves, in a garden behind one's tree, in the midst, eating swine's flesh, an abomination in the mouse, shall be consumed together. That should scare you. That should do something to you. That should make you want to put that pork chop down, right? I mean, if you love the Lord, it should. Do you love pork, catfish, shrimp more than the Most High God? That's what's going on here. I mean, because Christianity would teach you that it's okay to do it. Like, oh, it's all good, But we're reading. This is any biblical scholar would tell us that Isaiah 66 is a future end time connotation, right? This is when the Lord comes back, right? So we had to consider these things, right? I mean, at least, unless you just love that pig so much, you just love it. You love that nasty stuff so much that you would die for it. People don't understand. People really don't think God would kill you for eating this stuff. When we can look at our community and look at people that eat this stuff and see the health problems that they go through, right? You gotta know it's not okay. Nobody that eats pork chops, shrimp, crab, lobster, all that stuff that we shouldn't eat is sitting around here in tip-top shape. Nobody is sitting around in tip-top shape, looking like a Greek statue. Nobody's walking around like that. Nobody. And there's a reason, because he told us not to eat those things. Right? It says, they that sanctify themselves, purify themselves in the garden behind one's tree, behind the midst, eating swine's flesh, an abomination in the mouth shall be consumed together, said the Lord. For I know their works and their thoughts, right? He know your works and your thoughts. He know that you think, oh, well, shoot, this is just a little piece of bacon. God ain't going to do nothing about it, right? Then you go to your doctor appointment, you see you got high cholesterol and hypertension and blood pressure, but you still, in your infinite ignorance, will say, well, God ain't going to do nothing about it. Right? Have you ever heard of a slow death? Right? Think about what Adam and Eve did, what they did. What did God tell them? He said, if you eat of this tree, you will die. Did he say that? It said that, right? But did they die right there? No, they did not die right there, right? Do that mean God lied to them? No. It's called a slow death. That's what it's called, right? Let's go to First John, right? Let's start at chapter 2, right? Where is my where is my apocrypha? All right here. Oh, yeah. So yeah, verse 3. So 1 John chapter 2, verse 3. It says, and hereby we know that we know him. Because again, those people would sit in those buildings and say, yeah, we know God. They got the little tambourine, shaking it and dancing and whooping and hollering and stuff. They say they know him, right? Hereby we do know that we know him if we keep his commandments, right? That's how you know the Lord. Because everybody say, I got it. And I hate it when they say it. Because it's so crazy. They say, I got a personal relationship with God. You know, I got a personal relationship with God. God knows my heart. I got a personal relationship, right? That is very disrespectful to say, right? Looking at the context of the people that we read about in the Bible, right? Look at your life, right? And compare it to Moses' life, right? Are you doing the things that Moses is doing in your life? Moses was obedient to God, right? Moses did the things that God asked him to do, right? That's why Moses was one of the coldest of the coldest, right? That's why Moses did what Moses did. So the Bible says God talked to Moses like a friend, right? That's what the Bible said. God talked to Moses like a friend, right? So are you doing what Moses did? Because, I mean, to say I got a relationship with God, God knows my heart. You know, he knows this, he knows that, right? And then look at the people in the Bible, the righteous men and women of this book, and see what they went through and did, right? And sacrificed for the Lord. And for a person that keeps not one commandment to say that, that is very, very crazy and very disrespectful to say, right? Because, I mean, that just makes this crazy. Because, like, I mean, what should have, I mean, I guess God is messing with everybody then. You ain't got to be this whatever, right? That's crazy. It doesn't work like that. There's a lot of holy people in this book that did a lot of holy stuff, right? And because it's the thing, too. I know I'm rambling, but because it's the thing. Because the Bible is like this. You got prescriptive. It said you got prescriptive and descriptive, right? So, and we get the things confused, right? Dealing with these institutions. So we will see something descriptive, and we will apply it like it's prescriptive, and like, okay, well, God did that. You know, take David for example. David, you know, did the thing with Uriah and Bathsheba, the adultery thing, right? So now, you know, God was like, all right, I forgive you of your sin, you know, blah, 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 right? Know the story, right? So now people will focus on the part of God saying, okay, all right, I forgive you of that sin. And then they will say, well, should David commit adultery and God forgive him? So maybe I can go commit adultery and I'll be forgiven by God. Not understanding that that is a descriptive and not prescriptive, meaning that is a, you know, one-on-one case scenario, right? That is what God chose to do in that time, right? That doesn't mean like, okay, well, the next person up, Okay, all right, do it. Oh, might as well let him do it too. Well, you know what? Forget it. Everybody commit adultery now, right? That doesn't make sense, right? But they will believe that because it confused the two between prescriptive and descriptive. Prescriptive is, thus said the Lord, thou shalt not. The Lord said this. God said that, right? That's prescriptive, but we get it all confused. So it says, hereby we do know that we know him if we keep his commandments. He that say, I know him and keep not his commandments is a liar, right? That's what it says, right? So everybody that profess to be having a relationship with God and he knows his heart and, we're like the best of buds. That's my bud, that's my bud, right? He's a liar, is a liar. And the truth is not in him, right? Because if you're not keeping the commandments, then you're lying, right? And to say those things it's to lie on God, to make God a liar, right? Because God said, you need to do this. Then if you don't do this, then I'm going to do this. And then if you say, well, I can do what I want and I ain't got to do this, and God's still going to bless me and do this and do that, you're making God to be a liar. You're taking his word and say, nope, this ain't true. Rip it out. Nope, that ain't true. That's what you're doing. Unaware. And it's, and we gotta put the blame on these institutions that we go to. Because it says, he that say, I know him and keep not his commandments is a liar, and the truth is not in him. But they don't read that and teach that, right? They don't teach that you should keep the commandments and do what God say. And if you don't do it, and you're just going around saying, oh, I believe in God, he knows my heart, everything's cool. They're not teaching you that you are a liar according to God, right? That should make you feel something. That should make the average person want to be like, I don't want to be considered a liar to God, so let me do what I need to do so he won't look at me in that way. That's what a rational person would do, right? So, okay, let's jump over to chapter 3. 1 John 3, it says this. Start at 4. It says, whosoever committeth sin transgress also the law. So you go to church and they say, oh yeah, you need to stop being a sinner. Don't be a sinner. Oh, don't be a sinner. Get baptized. Stop sinning. But they never never teach you about sin. Because number one, they tell you that the law of God is done away with. So how can they teach you about what is sin if the instructions on telling you what sin is, they tell you don't look over there. Don't look at that. Nah, don't look at that. Don't read that. You don't need that. Nah. Right? It's crazy. Because it says, whosoever committeth sin transgresseth also the law. So to be a sinner, you have to break the laws of God. Right? That would make you a sinner. But you ask somebody, okay, what's a sin? Something bad, something that you shouldn't do, or, whatever, some people may say, whatever separates you from God. Now, that one might be a little closer, but that's not a definite answer. The Bible is clear. It just told us. What did our dear brother John say? Whosoever committeth sin, right? Meaning that is an infraction, a impediment on a law, transgressive also the law. So to be a sinner, you will have to break what God told you to do or not to do. For sin is, for what is sin? For sin is, what is sin? It's telling us, this is the definition right here. We ain't got to guess and speculate and be like, well, sin is, if you make me feel bad. Because some people would think just because you don't like me and think I'm a bad person, that doesn't make me a sinner, right? That's just simple, right? But people would say, because church is so vague in this, they don't tell you what's going on. Well, you make me feel bad, so I guess you're a bad person, so I guess you're a sinner. But it says this is the definition right here. We're reading it. Whosoever committeth sin transgress also the law. For sin is the transgression of the law. That's what sin is. It's not whatever pop in your head when somebody asks you the question. It's right here. Breaking God's law. The laws that was given to us through Moses. That is sin. Not because somebody may say something to you and you don't like what they said and now, oh, well, that person is a bad person. Maybe so. But it doesn't necessarily make them a sinner if it's not. Well, because even Paul said, where there's no law, there's no sin. Meaning, if it's no law saying you can't do X, Y, Z, then that's not a sin. Right? Then people will say, well, you can't keep all the laws. Nobody can keep all the laws. Says who? And when people say that, that means you never read the law. Because a lot of America's penal codes is based off the law of God. A lot of it. Some of it. Right? So to say that we can't keep the law, that means you never read it. Right? And then at the same time, you keep the law that applies to you. Because there's laws for women that don't apply to men. There's laws for men that don't apply to women. There's laws for business owners that don't apply to people that's not a business owner. There's laws for property owners that don't apply to people that's not property owners. Right? So you keep the law that applies to you. I mean, don't we do that here in America? Right? I mean, the fact that we're talking and you got to be doing that here in America as well. Keeping the laws that apply to you. That's why you're not in jail. Right? So, America has thousands of laws, and they pass thousands more each month and each year. God just have some several laws he done laid out for us, right? That have not changed since. In fact, they're so good that many nations done adopted them into their own little penal code system, right? But you have people complaining, oh, well, you can't keep it. Just because you never read it. That's why, every now and then here we like to read the law so we can see how practical they are. And they're not so mystifying that you got to be like some type of special guru to keep them. Because you can read this book and see many people kept it, right? But Christianity would tell you, oh, you can't keep the law. Nobody can keep the law. You break one law, you break them all, right? Yeah. Right? It's crazy. So then we got to call the apostles and Jesus and everybody a liar if we believe that. But of course we can't believe that. Right? Let's go to Acts. Let's go to Acts 17 and 30, right? Because people say, well, you can't keep the law, and or then then you think because, okay, maybe you learned that, okay, yeah, we can't keep the law. But be like, okay, well, that was, what, I already broke it, so I guess I'm a sinner. Because, they say you break one law, you break them all, right? That's what the excuse that people say, right? Our dear brother Paul says this. At times of this ignorance, God winked. So meaning before your knowledge of what God actually wants you to do, before you broke out of that white supremacist cult called Christianity, and any other false religion that you may be a part of. It says, at the times of this ignorance, meaning at the time of your ignorance when you didn't know better, following those crazy stuff and listening to these whacked out, paid under the table pastors, right? It says, at the time of this ignorance, God winked at it, meaning God be like, all right, they gonna get it eventually. I know they over there doing the Buddhist stuff. I'm a Ram Ray Ray come cool. I'm a Ram Ray Ray cool. Whatever that Tina Turner stuff was, right? I know they over there doing that. They gonna figure it out one day, right? So it says, God winked at it, but now commandeth all men were to repent. So now that you do know, you repent. Now that you do know, you should keep the law. You're supposed to keep the law. That is 50% of our salvation, right? That is one half of your salvation is keeping the law. The other half is keeping the faith in Christ, right? It says that. James said it. I mean, everywhere it says it, right? That's why we have to read this thing and compare it to the dogma that we learned from these people and see what is correct. Because this, this is not a game, right? I know we do this and we have a little fun. We be joking sometimes, right? But it's not a game, right? This is serious. And you have to want to actually understand if you're actually doing the correct walk, right? That should be on anybody's front mind, right? Not to just do anything blindly, right? Even this, look, see if it's true, right? So that's why it says, at the time of this ignorance, God winked at it, but now commandeth all men everywhere to repent, right? And you repent by keeping by stop doing, whatever sin it may be, and start keeping the law, right? Let's jump up to chapter 3 real quick. And they say this. Just start at 18, right? So Acts 3 and 18. Because people will say this also. Well, okay, the law. But Christ died on the cross, so we don't have to keep the law no more, right? You know what I mean? That's what he died for. Right? Now think about that statement or question. Christ died, so because he died for my sins, I no longer have to keep the law. Think about that, right? All right, let me ask you this. Say like we're driving together. You in your car, I'm in my car, right? We're speeding, right? We're speeding. We get pulled over. We both get tickets. I mean, you never got a ticket in a day of your life. You got all your stars on your license, right? Everything is perfect driver's license. You pay that ticket. I mean, do that mean I shouldn't have to pay my ticket because you paid your ticket? I mean, you have a perfect driving record, right? Just your very, very first ticket. And I've been speeding my whole life. But now you got a ticket. You paid your ticket, perfect driver record guy. So by that logic, why do I have to pay my ticket? This man is a perfect driver, no accidents, and he paid the ticket. So, Your Honor, I shouldn't have to pay my ticket. Do that really make sense? Would that work in the court of law? Probably not, right? So that doesn't make sense that to think that because he died, now you can just do whatever. That's not what the Bible says. Even Paul said, should we make void the law because of sin? God forbid. No, we establish the law. That's what it says. But Christianity don't teach that. Why would it teach you that? Because it's a lawless religion, right? They can't tell you what thus said the Lord says. I mean, why? That don't make sense. But those things which God, before had showed by the mouth of his prophets that Christ should suffer, he has so fulfilled. So they're like, well, yeah, Christ died, and for my sins he fulfilled those things, right? So just see what those things that he fulfilled when he came, though, right? Because we can figure this out. It's not a mystery, right? But those things was God before showed by the mouth of his prophets, right? So that means in the Old Testament that Christianity try to forbade us to go into. Oh, well, it's the New Testament. We're in the New Testament now. Why are you reading that Old Testament stuff? Right? But it just told us, but those things which God before showed by the mouth of his prophets. So that means to get the full understanding, we will have to go to the prophets to see what they were saying about Christ, what he's going to do, right? Because didn't he say I came in the volume of the book? It is written on me. He said that, right? He said that. So let's see, right? What he did. Let's go to Romans real quick. Let's go to Romans 7. Romans 7 and 12, right? And it says, wherefore the law is holy, and the commandment is holy, and just, and good. And that is true. It is holy, just, and good. It says, which then that is made, which then that it is good, made death unto me. God forbid. But sin that might appear sin, working death in me, by which is good, that by sin the commandment might become exceedingly sinful. Right? So meaning we don't understand sin, or we don't know that we're sinning unless we know what the law is. Right? And by understanding the law, then that can let us know if we're sinners or not. Right? But if you have people telling you, well, you don't have to keep the law, and and he died for your sins, and so whatever, as long as you believe in Jesus, it's cool, right? We don't read that, right? Let's get Matthew real quick. Matthew 17. So now this is Christ speaking right here. And it says, think not that I come to destroy the law. So, because again, he did not come to destroy the law. Right? It says, did not come to destroy the law or the prophets. So everything that the prophets written about, because we just read that, through the mouth of his prophets, that he, was spoken about. And it says, I am not come to destroy, but to fulfill. So then people, they'll get caught up on that language right there, to fulfill. And to fulfill means to carry out, right? It doesn't mean it's done with. Because again, the same way, if somebody paid a traffic ticket and now you get the same traffic ticket, that doesn't mean you don't have to, you're now exonerated from paying all traffic tickets now, right? That's not how it works. And it says, Verily I say unto you, till heaven and earth pass away, one jot or one tittle shall no wise pass away from the law. So now, just look around. This is the earth, right? We live on planet Earth. We still here on solid ground. We can look up and see the space, the stars, the moon, the sun, the quasars, all that cool stuff, right? We see that. So he's saying, verily I say unto you, until heaven and earth pass, one jot or one tittle shall in no wise pass from the law, till all be fulfilled, right? Meaning everything that is written, right? Not just the return of Christ coming, but everything, all the prophecies have to be fulfilled, right? And as we see, there's still a lot of more prophecies to go, right? Still got World War III, Mark of the Beast, civil unrest, the fall of society, right? Everything, right? So, I know I said, I'm laughing at myself. I know I just said all of that like I was excited for all that stuff to come. But I'm just saying that's what's coming, right? So, it says, verily I say unto you, until heaven and earth pass, one jot or one tittle should no wise pass from the law to all be fulfilled, right? So it all has to be fulfilled. And what is fulfilled? What he fulfilled was his coming, right? What he did. Hold up. I think I want. Hold up. Hold on. Yeah, okay. Hold up. Oh, let's get John real quick. John 19 and 23. So John 19 and 23 says this. Then the soldiers, when they had crucified Jesus, took his garments and made four parts, to every soldier a part, and also his coat. Now the coat was without seams, woven from the top through. Right? So now this is an account that we can go back and read in the book of Psalms, because again, he came in the volume of the book. So when it says that, it was written of him and things have to be fulfilled. So when he came, through the spirit of David and the prophecy that he wrote in Psalms about this occasion where he's being crucified and the soldiers is gambling, over his clothes, taking souvenirs, for lack of better terms, right? Let's get Luke real quick. Let's go to Luke. Hold up. Let's go to Luke 18, right? Oh, let me see. Luke 18, I think. So right here, it says, then he looked, so Luke 18 and 31, it says, then he took unto him the 12 and said unto them, behold, we go up up to Jerusalem, and all things that are written by the prophets concerning the Son of Man shall be accomplished. So we know the account, right? What happens? He went to Jerusalem. He was crucified, right? That's what happened. So, but then we also know there's something we call the second coming of Christ, when he come back and judge the world and all that stuff. So that did not happen, right? So it says, so when it says, you know, about him fulfilling, you know, the things that was written of him, it was talking about his death. That's what he was fulfilling, because he still have to come back and, how we like to say, rectify this situation that we're currently going through right now, right? Put belt to ass when he come back this time, like the Bible say, come back as a conquering lion, right? But this time it says, then he took unto him 12 disciples. We read it right. It says, then he took unto him 12 and said unto them, behold, we go up to Jerusalem, and all things that are written by the prophets concerning the Son of Man shall be accomplished, meaning his crucifixion. For he shall be delivered unto the Gentiles, and shall be mocked spitefully, entreated, and spit on. So that happened, right? And that was written about through David. Then it says, and they shall scourge him and put him to death. And the third day he shall rise again. So this what he fulfilled, right? Not, oh well, we don't have to keep the law anymore, so now I can go and be as ratchet and wicked person as I want. All I got to do is say I believe in Jesus. That's not what we are reading. We're reading that his fulfillment was the crucifixion that he was going to go through, right? That's what, you know, we can read about, right? Not, oh, well, you know, you will not be able to read that, oh, that means you can sin whatever, you know, it's all good now. We're not be able to read that. Then it says, and they understood none of these things, and this saying was hid from them, neither they knew the thing which were spoken, right? So just get let's get Psalms real quick. Let's get Psalms. Let's see what up. So right here. So Psalms 22 and 15. It says, my strength is dried up like a potsherd. My tongue cleaved to my jaws. And thou hast brought me unto the dust of death. So now this is King David prophesying, you know, through the spirit of the Mashiach Yahawashi, who the world calls Christ, writing about his crucifixion and the agony that he's going to be going through, right? So it says, my strength is dried up like a potsherd, and my tongue cleaved to my jaws. And thou hast brought me into the dust of death. For dogs had compassed me, meaning these other, you know, the Romans had, you know, snatched them up. And says, and the wicked have enclosed me. They pierced my hands and feet. Did they do that with the crucifixion? They nailed him on the cross, right? Then it says, my way tell all my bones, they look and stare at me. They part my garments among them. So we just read in the New Testament how the soldiers were gambling and trying to split up his clothes and say who's going to get what, trying to take souvenirs and stuff from the man, right? Robbing the man, even in death. So it says, they parted my garments among them and cast lots for my vestures. But not thou far from me, O Lord. My strength has thee helped me. right? So again, so David wrote about the agony that Christ was going to go through. So when Christ said that, when it says about him fulfilling, that's what we're reading, him fulfilling the crucifixion, not him just eradicating sin. So now we can do whatever we want. It says that he has the keys to life and death now, meaning he can punish you in this life, or he can punish you through death, right? That's what that means. It doesn't mean that, oh, he got the keys to life and death, so that means, I can be a sinner because all I got to do is, no, that it's worse now. It's way worse. Like how they say on the West Coast, it's way worse. On the dead homies, it's way worse, right? It's way worse now. He got the keys, right, to life and death, meaning he got the power to punish you, right? Because we follow, in our system, right? We have the Levitical priesthood, right? So the priests was like the executive branch and stuff like that. So they will carry out the punishments. But Christ have the keys to life and death now. He is the captain now. So he can punish you in this life, put your life in hell, or punish you in the next life, right? So that's what's going on there. So it's way worse. So yeah, that's what's going on over there. So let's get this real quick. Let's get credit. All right, okay, right here. So let's start at 53. Isaiah 53. Let's start at the top. So it says, start at verse 2. All right, let's start at verse 1. It says, whom have believed our report, and to whom is the arm of the Lord revealed, right? So, so who's the arm of the Lord, right? The Mashiach Yahushua. Then it says, for he shall grow up before him as a tender plant. So again, so he grew up. He came as a man child, right? Through the loins of Jesse and Mary, right? Then it says, he grew up before him as a tender plant, and as a root out of a dry ground. He has no form or no comeliness, meaning, it's just your average Joe. He's not charismatic. He's not that handsome guy that all the girls, all around, right? Just your average guy, right? And when we see him, there's no beauty that we should desire him. Meaning, when you see him, he's not going to be like some spectacular guy, like, looking, like somebody that you probably should follow. Like, hey, let's go get with that Jesus guy. Look at him, right? It says, he is despised and rejected of men, and men of sorrow. So, and that's what happened. The Pharisees, the religious leaders of that time, they rejected, Christ, right? The people, accepted him, but the people in the hierarchy of the establishment, the rulers, they rejected him, right? Because they didn't want to lose their spot. And it says he was despised and rejected of men, a man of sorrow. So this man was a man of sorrow because, number one, he's dealing with these hard-headed Negroes on a day-to-day basis. And then you got the Romans, breathing down your neck, right? So you got to teach these hard-headed people all day long. Then you got 5-0, the Romans, Esau, swerving on the block all day long, messing with people, jacking people, stopping and frisking everybody, right? Yeah, the Romans stopped and frisked people, man. Don't think they didn't, right? So, man of sorrow, a lot of, as people is being oppressed, right? A lot of, wickedness. When you get into the history of that time and the influence that the Romans were doing, it wasn't a great time for the people of Judea. So it was a man of sorrow. Then the plus, he knew the life that he had to live. He knew that he had to, be a sacrifice for the nation. So knowing that one day you're gonna have to, you know, have to end this whole thing, that can weigh on a person, right? And we know it weighed on him because, his final night when it was in the Garden of Gethsemane, he prayed about 3 times for it not to happen, right? So it weighed on him, and he even was praying and so stressed out about it. The Bible said he was sweating blood, right? That's what's going on, right? So it says, and we boom boom boom. It says, a man of sorrow and acquainted with grief, and we hid as it were our faces from him. So when he came, like I said, the religious leaders, the people at that time, they didn't want to, accept him as an equal, as their fellow rabbi up in there, right? That's why he took it to the streets and talked to people, right? It says, and we hid as it were our faces from him, and he was despised. They spreaded rumors about him, said he was doing sorcery, said he was doing works of devils, right? Saying that, he was making outlandish claims and stuff, right? And it says, and we esteemed him not, meaning they didn't give him his props. They didn't give him like, they didn't give him his props and how we say today. They didn't give him his flowers, right? They did not esteem him and acknowledge his greatness and what he was doing, right? Instead, they try to, bury them, literally and figuratively. Surely he had borne our grief and carried our sorrows, yet we esteemed him and smitten of God and afflicted. So that's what they did. They beat him and mistreat him when they caught him. They arrested him, they beat him, scourged him up real good. It says, he was wounded for our transgressions, right? So a lot of people will read this and be like, because you have the little dummies out there, and I got to say it like that, because we can't play with these people. Got these little dummies. They'll say, well, Isaiah was talking about, some people would say Isaiah was talking about himself, which is stupid. Some people would say Isaiah was talking about David, which is also stupid, right? It's just all stupid, right? And I gotta say it like that. It's stupid because Christianity is stupid, right? So we gotta say it like that because that's just what it is. We ain't playing with them. It says, but he was wounded for our transgressions. He was bruised for our iniquity. The chastisement of our peace was upon him, and with his stripes we are healed, right? So let's talk about the Mashiach Yahweh Shai, who we know as Christ, right? That's what that's talking about, right? So that's what he fulfilled, right? That's what the fulfillment was. His crucifixion for the nation, right? Not to eradicate the law, and now we don't have to keep the law. That's not what's going on, right? And let's get back over here. So let's read hold on. Hold on, let's get this real quick before we go back to John. right? Let's go to Proverbs. Yeah, well, we get that too. Hold up. Let's go to not Proverbs, yeah, Proverbs, that's what I meant, Proverbs. Boom, boom, boom. Proverbs. Hold on, matter of fact, it was in Psalms. All right, right here. My bad. So Proverbs, keep saying Proverbs. Psalms 19:7. It says, "The law of the Lord is perfect." So, because a lot of people would say, "Well, nobody's perfect. You can't be perfect." But then we forget that Christ told us, "Be ye perfect as your Father in heaven is perfect." What did he mean by that? Did he lie to us? Right? Did Jesus go around making up stuff, going around telling people, hey, be perfect? Then when he walk away, like, I told that nigga to be perfect. That nigga can't be perfect. Watch this. Is that what he's doing? Right? Because David said this, "The law of the Lord is perfect, converting the soul." So what does that mean? The law of the Lord is perfect, meaning when God was on Mount Sinai talking to Moses and talking to the Israelites and telling us what was going on, the words that came out of his mouth and told us and what he said to do was perfect. So if we do those things, then by default, that will make us perfect. Not perfect in the English lexicon type of way, in the English definition way of perfect, meaning never ever made a mistake 100%. Not that type of perfect. Perfect meaning the law that God told us to do was perfect when he said them. So if you do those perfect instructions that he gave us, you will be perfect. That's just like if you're in karate, to be a black belt, you have to take the test to be a black belt. You can't just walk around telling everybody I'm a black belt, right? They're gonna look at you like you're crazy. Yeah, I'm a black belt in karate. Then you get into a fight, you get your ass whooped, right? Right? So you have to actually do it, So to be perfect, you have to keep the laws because it says the law of the Lord is perfect, converting the soul. That's how you get converted. When Paul said, "Be ye converted," repent and be converted, right? You be converted by keeping the law because it says the law of the Lord is perfect, converting the soul. That's how you get that conversion. That's why that water baptism doesn't work, because you take a person that's in the world messing up, you dump them in that nasty, filthy, dirty, stinky, mold infested water, they come up wet and still the same person, unchanged, right? Because it's not the water, it's the fire. What did it say? I baptize you with the fire, the spirit. The words I speak unto you is spirit, right? And that is the law. Keeping the law is what give you that conversion. That's that baptism. Coming back to the Most High God, Yahweh, and doing what he said. Because it says the law of the Lord is perfect, converting the soul. The testimony of the Lord is sure, making wise the simple. So it'll even improve your IQ level doing what God say. Right? Because it says making wise the simple. Meaning these laws are so easy, even someone that's probably not the brightest light bulb in the house, they can probably figure it out. They can understand this stuff. It's not that hard. So when pastors say, well, you can't keep the laws of God because, you know, nobody could. That's why Jesus had to do it. So then somebody's lying, because the law of the Lord is perfect, converting the soul, because how we get that conversion so we can be converted, converting the soul, the testimony of the Lord is sure, making wise the simple, right? And that simple is old English for someone that's probably not as smart as they want to be, right? And it's telling you that it can take that person who is not as smart as they want to be and make wise the simple. That's the power of the God's word, right? So what is Pastor talking about? Nobody can keep it. If the simple can keep it, like it just said, making wise the simple, somebody can keep it, right? Like what's that old 70s movie? Somebody lied to you, Jack, right? It's crazy. Let's get everybody. Deuteronomy 28 real quick. Deuteronomy 28 and 1. What do it say? It says that. So this is God speaking to the children of Israel, right? Because whether you like it, believe it, understand it, or not, from Genesis to Revelation, it's all about the Black, Hispanic, and Native American people, who we know as the Israelites, right? That's what it's all about. And this is what he said. And it shall come to pass, if thou shalt hearken diligently unto the voice of the Lord thy God, to observe and to do all his commandments which I command thee this day, that the Lord thy God will set thee on high above all nations of the earth. So that's God's promise. We do his commandments, he's going to make us the top nation on earth, right? That's the promise. So why would we not want to keep the commandments, right? Because look where we at now. We're at the bottom of society. All the other nations in this, society rule over us, right? And let's get, boom, boom, boom. Let's get Isaiah real quick. Yeah, Isaiah 56 and 10 real quick. And it say this. It says, and because you're dealing with these institutions, right? They have no regard for the people. Their only gain is for money and popularity, right? That's what they do it for, right? They not like they're not like Jeezy. They don't do it for the streets. They don't do it for the hood, right? Thinking about that young Jeezy song. I do it for the street. I don't know, but yeah, right. So this, right? It says his watchmen are blind, meaning these our religious leaders are people that's supposed to watch over our people, the so-called leaders of the community, right? Our spiritual leaders as well. It says his watchmen are blind. They are all ignorant. They are all dumb dogs, right? Because what is a function of a dog, right? A dog, depending on how you train that dog, can be a security system, good alarm system. A dog could be, right? A dog can let you know when somebody's coming before they even come. They start barking and, getting all anxious, right? Let you know, hey, trouble coming. Somebody's coming. So then they make you alert, right? Then you start getting on guard, right? That's what a good dog does. That's why, we got to give Esau credit. They did their job when they domesticated the dog, right? And so that's why, we can kind of use that dog if he's trained in a good way, to be a early warning system, right? But our leaders, it says his watchmen are blind and they are all ignorant, meaning they don't know what's going on. They don't understand what's going on, right? That's why you have a lot of these little Christian pastors trying to revamp Christianity and put a new spin on it, like they're going to do something great and new, right? Christianity is garbage, right? Plain and simple. It is a pagan religion that was concocted in 300 AD, right? 300 years after the death of Christ and his disciples. They waited 300 years later to come up with that bull stuff, right? It has nothing to do with this book. All paganism. But we don't know that because they say Jesus a million times when they're talking. And they hold the Bible in their hand. So, of course, Christianity got to be about God, right? It says, his watchmen are blind. They are all ignorant. They are all dumb dogs. They cannot bark, meaning they don't know what's going on. They don't warn the people. They don't say, hey, this is what's coming. This prophecy is going on right now. America is doing this. Russia is going to do that. China is moving like this. They don't talk like that because they want to talk like this and sing and dance and clap and make you go in your pockets and go and give them all your money. They can't talk like that, right? His watchmen are blind. They're all ignorant. They're all dumb dogs. They cannot bark, sleeping, lying down, loving to slumber. They like, well, shoot, don't bother me, I won't bother it. That's why you don't hear, pastors speaking on so-called black rights and advancement of, black people, right? Like they used to do in the 50s, right? In the 60s. Now pastors get on there like, we're Christians. I'm a Christian. I'm not, talking about I'm a black man and this black pride stuff. What's wrong with these people want to be prideful of being black? Black is disgusting. You should hate being black. Hate your little big Negro nose. Hate your little big monkey lips. Hate your little kinky hair, right? Be a Christian, right? That's essentially what they're saying, right? Because they cannot bark, sleeping, lying down, loving to slumber, meaning they don't give a care about what's going on. Yeah, they are greedy dogs. That's why they show up in their little nice little glittery suits and stuff like that. Because they are greedy dogs, which can never have enough. That's why they say, close the door. Close the door. We all gonna leave together. Close the door. Right? Matter of fact, everybody listening, we need $1,000 right now. Close the door. Close the door. Right? We all gonna leave here together. Right? They are greedy dogs, which can never have enough. They are shepherds that cannot understand. They don't understand this book. That's why you can look it up if you don't believe me. I was amazed when I found out, because I know the stuff I see, but there is 40,000 different Christian denominations. Can you imagine taking this book right here and making 40,000 different belief systems? Crazy. Crazy. It says, they are greedy dogs which can never have enough. They are shepherds that cannot understand. That's why they can read this book and say, well, just make 40,000 different religions. Right? When the very first scripture we read was Joshua 1:8, what did it say? This book of the law. They didn't call this thing of a religious book. It said this book of the law. But they took this thing and made 40,000 different variations of crap. That's what they did. It says, yeah, they are greedy dogs which can never have enough. They are shepherds. They cannot understand. They all look to their own way. That's why they create all these. That's why you got all these different churches on different corners, because they all looking to their own way. all trying to fatten their pockets, right? It says they all look to their own way, right? That's why they're come up with different denominations, right? And it says looking to their own way. And it says one for his gain and one for his quarter, because they all teaching for hire. It's all about that money, 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 money. Some people got to have it. Some people, yeah, that's what they own, right? Money, money. That's what it's all about. Cause they got to have it. Greedy dogs, right? And it says, come ye say, they, we will fetch wine. It says, so they be like, look, we're living so good, man. Let's go and spurge out and just do something extravagant. Because we're just stealing all this money from these dumb people that come every week from us. It says, come ye say, I will fetch wine, and we will fill ourselves with strong drink. So it's not per se talking about wine. It's just talking about just the luxuries of life, right? And it says, and tomorrow shall be as this day, meaning this is a great hustle. These people are really freaking dumb. Can you believe that stuff I just told these people? And I just got $20,000 because I told them to close the door. Nobody leaves unless you give me $1,000. Ushers close the doors. That shit worked. It did. And it says, and tomorrow shall be as today, and much more abundant. Like, man, we can keep this stuff going, dude. Like, come on, like, get you a nice little suit. You know what I'm saying? I know this barber can probably line you up nice. No, look, dude, this is great. We can keep this going, right? That's their thought process. And we see it. Let's get, let's get Micah real quick. What is that? Is this the one I want? Hold up. Malachi. Boom. Oh, okay, yeah. Malachi 2:7. So it says this. Matter of fact, let's start at 6. The law of truth was in his mouth, and iniquity was not found in his lips. He walked with me in peace and iniquity, and did many and turned many from iniquity. Right. So, talking about the priest, the job of the priest, right? Because going back to keeping the law, right? So the priest definitely got to keep the law because he got to show the people how to do it, right? Verse 7, for the priest's lips. So what are the pastor supposed to be doing with his time when he's talking in a seductive way to the congregation and trying to seduce them into giving them all their money? It says, for the priest's lips should keep knowledge, right? That's what he should do. And they should seek the law at his mouth. So that knowledge he should be keeping is the words of God, and they should seek the law at his mouth, meaning he should be teaching you the laws of God instead of teaching you what the laws of God is done away with, right? Because, I mean, we all love Jesus, right? Everybody loves Jesus, right? What did Jesus say? Jesus said, he that, break the least of the commandments shall be called least in heaven. That's what he said. If you break the least of the commandments, right? So just give an example of a least commandment. Let's take something that we can see, right? Let's take my beard, for example, right? Let's just say I decided to shave my beard off and go straight, you know, Boy Scout, right? That'll be a least commandment that I'm breaking. It's not anything major. I just shave my beard off. But Christ said, if you break the least of the commandments, you will be called least in heaven. And if you teach, so not only if you break it, then if you teach people that it's okay to break the law, you will be called least in heaven. So ask yourself a question. Do you want to be called least in heaven? Right? Wouldn't you want to be great in heaven? Because he says, he that teach men to keep the commandments should be called great. Right? Don't you want to be called great? Don't you want to be walking down the streets? Then Jesus walking down the street and he see you and he's like, hey, that's what's the name over there? That dude is great. That man is great. Look at him. He's great. Look at him, everybody. Clap it up. Don't you, you don't want Jesus to look at you and drinking a Slurpee and see you walking and throw a Slurpee cup at you and look at you like you're supposed to pick it up? Right? You don't want that, do you? I mean, right? Something to think about. So it says, for the priest's lips should keep knowledge, and they should seek the law at his mouth, for he is the messenger of the Lord of hosts. That's what he's supposed to do. He's supposed to be teaching the people the laws of God, because he is the messenger of the Lord of hosts. But they are departed out of the way, and ye cause many to stumble at the law. That's what they do, because they tell everybody, well, you don't got to keep the law. Nobody can keep the law, and just don't do that type of stuff. Because it says, but ye depart out the way, and ye have caused many to stumble at the law. That's why people can go to Red Lobster and get the little platter, shrimp platter and stuff, and be all right with that. Then mess around and be like Pimp C and get iodine poisoning. What do you say? Iodine poisoning. That song. I eat so many shrimps, I got iodine poisoning. Right? That's what happens. Right? I remember one time, like, this is a long time ago. Like, used to eat shrimp, right? A long time ago, like a lot of us did, right? So then I stopped eating shrimp for another reason, not because of, the Bible, it's because, another reason I wouldn't get into right now. So then I was working at a restaurant and they had like seafood there, and I was hungry, and I was like, let me try one of these shrimp. I tried to eat that shrimp, damn near killed myself. Try to eat it. Then throat swelled up, couldn't even, almost choked to death trying to eat it. Because I got iodine poisoning. Right? So, back over here. It says, but ye are departed out of the way. Ye had caused many to stumble at the law. And that's what happens, because a lot of people say, well, Christ died for our sins, and we just read what he died. What he did, he died. He fulfilled what Isaiah and David was talking about that was going to happen, right? About his suffering for the nation, right? He still had to come back and judge everything. So everything he didn't fulfill, and now everything is, we don't got to do anything. It's still a lot of stuff that has to take place, right? So it says, many to stumble at the law, ye have corrupted the covenant of the Levi, said Yahweh of hosts. And that's what they did. They, sit in these pulpits and they corrupt the law by telling you, like, well, you don't have to do none of this stuff that God say. Like, why would you, God was just playing with you. God didn't mean all that stuff. You ain't got to do all that. So, nobody can do all that. Real quick. Excuse me, real quick. Let's see this real quick. So this is Luke, New Testament, right? Luke, chapter 1. And let's start at 5. There was in the days of Herod, the king of Judea, a certain priest named Zacharias. So now Zacharias is a Levite, he's a priest. This is John the Baptist's father, right? And it says, of the course of Abiah, right? So meaning he was, because during that time, how the priest did it, the priests rotate. So they would probably work like 3 months on, then 3 months off, 3 months on. So they rotate. So during his scheduled time to be at the temple was during Abiah, which would probably fall in the middle of March, April, right? So that's where he's at with the whole thing, right? So it says, and his wife was the daughter of Aaron, and her name was Elizabeth, right? So we got two people. We have a priest, which is a Levi. Today we will call him a Haitian brother, and we got his wife Elizabeth from the daughter of Aaron, which will also be a Haitian sister, right? Two of our Haitian brothers and sisters, right? Two Haitians. I love the Haitians. Love the Haitians. Great people. Love the Haitians, right? So let's see about our good Haitian brothers and sisters. What was going on with Zachariah and Elizabeth? And they were both righteous. Oh my God. They was righteous before God, walking in all the commandments. Oh my God. These two Haitian people kept the commandments. Walking in all the commandments and ordinance of the Lord. Blameless. Oh my God. How could Christianity be true by telling us no one can keep the law? But we just read a man and woman walking blameless and keeping all the commandments and ordinance of God. Oh my God. How could that be possible? Right? Somebody's lying. If we're going to believe a record, because that's what the Bible means. The word Bible means, it's a Greek word means biblical, which means record. Right? So if we're going to believe a record, these people was keeping the law. Right? That's what we read. They were both righteous before God, walking in all the commandments and ordinance of the Lord. Blameless. That's what they was doing, being blameless, meaning they was not breaking the laws of God. So, two people we see. So, this is New Testament. So, let's do a count. Let's do a head count. Without just reading every verse in every book, just off the top of our head count. We know Christ kept the law. So, then we got Zachariah and Elizabeth. That's 3. Right? And 2 of them not divine. How people would say, well, Jesus was, that was the, that's why he was able to keep the law, because, he was the, he was able to do it because of, But 2 of them is not, quote unquote, divine. All right? Let's go here, real quick. Let's go to our dear brother, Job. Right? Job chapter 1, verse 1. Right? Let's see what Job was doing with his life. There was a man in the land of Uz, whose name was Job. And that man was, drum roll please, perfect. That man was perfect. And if we remember, we read Psalms 19 and 7, the law of the Lord is perfect. So what was Job doing to be perfect? He was keeping the laws of the Lord. That's what makes you perfect, right? It says, there was a man in the land of Uz, whose name was Job, and that man was perfect and upright, and one that feared God and shewed evil. So the man was perfect and upright. He kept the law. He didn't, go against, he didn't break the law. So we got 3 from the New Testament. Job, if you want to count the verse we read earlier in Malachi when it's talking about the priests, how we have to come to the priest to get keep the commandments and learn the commandments. So the priest's supposed to keep the commandments, right? So we got 5 already, and we didn't even read verse by verse, chapter by chapter. That's, let's get this real quick. Let's see what this say. Job 7 and 21. It says, I have sinned. What shall I do unto thee? What shall I do unto thee? O thou preserver of man. Why hast thou set me a mark against thee, so that I am burdened myself? It says, why hast thou not pardoned my transgressions and take away my iniquities? For now I shall sleep in the dust, and shall seek me in the morning, but I should not be. Right? So, of course, so now Job, did not sin, but, Job is, of course, he's going through his agony and he's thinking like, well, I must have did something, right? That's why I'm going through this. But the point is that Job did not sin, right? And so we got Job. Then let's see, who else? Who else can we go? We know David, right? So you got to go to David? Abraham. Shoot, if you want to be technical about it, Adam, before they start, doing what they was doing about it, before they stopped keeping the law, that's when they end up sinning. Because that's what the sin was, them not keeping the law. It wasn't them actually eating anything. It was just them no longer keeping the law. So yeah. We see these things, right? We are supposed to keep the law. That is a qualification that God had given us. And let's get this real quick before we get up out of here. Hold on 1 second. So right here. So it's Leviticus, right? Look at a few laws though. Just a couple laws. Dietary laws real quick. So yes. Let's start. Let's start at 9. So it's a Leviticus 11 and 9, right? So these are some laws that they done told us that we can't keep, right? So now this is a dietary law. And if we keep these dietary laws, we can see how healthy and better we will be, health-wise, right? But a lot of times we don't keep these laws, and that's why we suffer these different health conditions that our people end up going through. So this says this: these shall ye eat of all are in the waters. So it's going to tell us what type of fish we can eat that's in the water. Whatsoever have fins and scales. So the fish that you eat have to have fins and scales, right? Catfish do not have fins and scales. They have fins, but they don't have scales. Catfish are smooth surface fish, right? They don't have scales. So you can't eat catfish, right? I know a lot of people love catfish. Can't eat it. It says, oysters don't have fins or scales. Shrimp don't have fins or scales. Lobsters, crab do not have fins or scales, right? And it says, these shall ye eat that are in the water, whatsoever have fins and scales. So whatever have fins and scales, you can eat it. You know, there's a lot of nice fish that have fins and scales. Salmon, perch, cod, all that stuff, right? Now, me personally, I don't eat seafood at all. But, you know, I heard the stuff that you're supposed to eat is pretty good. And I take people's word for it, right? So, and it says, whatsoever have fins and scales in the waters, in the seas, in the rivers, them shall ye eat. All have not fins and scales in the sea and in the water of all the moving of all that move in the water, and any living thing which is in the waters, they shall be abomination to you. Meaning, don't eat those things. If it's not a fish that have fins and scales, do not eat it. Right? Those are bottom feeders. Those are there for a purpose to keep the ocean clean. Right? Have you ever wondered why, you know, certain bodies of water are so murky and dark? Right? That's because they done took all the shrimp and the bottom feeders out, the little crawfish and whatever, right? That's supposed to do their natural job to keep the water clean, but it's supposed to be crystal clean. Right? You should be able to look through the water. But you can't look through the water no more because all the stuff that's supposed to keep the water clean is not in the water keeping clean because people are putting it on their plates, eating it. So that's why the water is not clean like it should. And it says, all that have not fins and scales in the sea, in the river, of all that move in the waters, and of the living things which is in the waters, shall be abomination to you. They shall be even an abomination unto you. Ye shall not eat their flesh, but ye shall have their carcass abomination. So God telling you to be appalled by these things, right? You should not want to touch it, eat it, be around it. It is abomination, right? So you should treat it like it's a disgusting bug or insect or something, right? Because that's essentially what they are. They're water bugs. And it says, all these things which ye have an abomination among the fowls shall not be eaten. They are abomination. So now, what type of birds should we eat, right? You know, it says, these are abominations. So we should not go around eating eagles, right? And ostrich. So, you know, some people like to eat ostrich burgers and stuff like that. You can't have your ostrich burger. I know you might like to have you a little ostrich burger. But no, you can't do that. You can't eat the ostrich. And it says, and the osprey, and a vulture, and a kite after his kind. So you can't eat the owl. It says, every raven of his kind, and the owl, and the nighthawk, and a cluck cow, and the hawk after his kind. And the little owl, and the cormorant, and the great owl, and the swan, and the pelican, and the gyre. So no ducks too. I know people like to eat duck. Can't eat duck. You know, you gotta leave the duck alone if you like eating duck. And it says, the gyre eagle, the skork, the heron after her kind, and the lapwing, and the bat. So no bats neither. So don't go to Japan and start eating you a bat. You know, don't go to China and like, you know, take me down to the market. I want to find me Batman. You know, I want to get the biggest bat I can eat. Give me the biggest. No, don't do that. Right? No bats. All the fowls that creep, going on all fours, be abominations, right, unto you. Yet these yet these may ye eat of the flying and creeping things that go upon on all fours, that have legs above their feet and leap, that leap with all the earth. So now this is talking about actual insects. Now, of course, if you know, you know. I'm not eating no bugs, but it is certain type of insects we can eat, like grasshoppers, locusts. You know, you can eat. I'm guessing certain type of beetles. I'm not sure. Then it says these boom boom boom. It says yeah, these may you eat of all the fine creeping things that go upon on all fours, having legs above their feet, to leap or to withdraw upon the earth. Even these of them you may eat. The locust. So it's telling you you can eat the locust, you know, but I'm not gonna eat no locust. God, you know, Lord, you know, God forbid that. But you can eat the locust, right? That's not an unclean bug to eat, you know. Then it says, after his kind, because John the Baptist ate locusts. You know, he ate locusts and pancakes. You know, we call it pancakes today, but the Bible don't call it pancakes. You know, he called it got the word that they use, but we'll call it pancakes today. Then it says, a locust after his kind, the bald locust after his kind, and the beetle after his kind, and the grasshopper after his kind. All other flying creepy things which have 4 feet shall be abomination unto you. So those things you can't eat. So you can't go around eating cockroaches and all other type of little insects that people like to eat, like scorpions and stuff like that. You can't do that, right? But it's a certain type of bugs you can eat, like grasshoppers, locusts, and certain beetles. But me personally, you won't catch me doing that. But you can eat those things. Then it says, and for these shall be unclean, whatsoever touch the carcass of them shall be unclean. So if you touch one of these little things that is abomination, you will be unclean just by touching it. It says, and whosoever hold up. So hold on. All right, yeah. So let me jump down to this one. So it says, and whosoever bear aught the carcass of them shall wash his clothes and be unclean until evening. So you know, if you end up, you know, touching one of these unclean things by accident or whatever, you know, wash your clothes, you know, then you'll be unclean until that evening, till the sun go down, right? You'll be considered unclean. Then so then even again, so going back to the law, right? So you have to say you're around, you know, you accidentally, you know, touch some bacon or something by accident. It was on a stove and you was reaching for something and then you touched the bacon, right? So then, okay, so now you're unclean, right? So then by law you be unclean. So then, you know, they say, well, you broke the law, so then you're a sinner, right? So then even if you're unclean, what did it tell you to do? You know, you wash your clothes and then you'll be unclean until evening. So even if you do break the law, it's provisions what you do when you break the law for you can get back into keeping the law again, right? But you wouldn't know that if you never read the law. You just think, well, I just broke the law, so now I'm a sinner forever. Nah, it's provisions that you do to get back into standards. Anyway. And it says, the carcass of every beast which divided the hoof and is not a cloven foot, nor chew the cud, are unclean to you. Everyone that touches them shall be unclean. So the pig do not chew the cud, right? Although it has the cloven hoof, you know, the split hoof, but it doesn't chew the cud, right? Then it says, and whatsoever go go upon his paws upon the manner of a beast and go on all fours, those unclean to you. So no dogs. So you can't get on a plane and go to Korea and China and start eating dog, right? Get you a fried rice and dog. You can't do that. So it says, whatsoever go upon his paws among all manners of beasts that go on all fours, those are unclean to you. Whosoever touch their carcass shall be unclean until even. And he that bear the carcass of them shall wash his clothes and be unclean until even, and they are unclean until you. Right? So again, you know, if you end up touching something that is unclean, you know, you wash your clothes, then you know you be considered unclean until that evening, right? Then it says, these shall be unclean to you among the creeping things that creep upon the earth, the weasel, the mouse, and the taurus, after his kind. So you can't eat the mouse. You can't go down south somewhere with your cousins and stuff and your uncles and go shoot your little rabbit. What you doing? I'm hunting rabbit. You can't go down there with your cousins and go hunting rabbit. You know, I'm trying to get, that's my Elmer Fudd. Hunting rabbit. Right? You can't do that, right? So it says, the weasel, the mouse, and the taurus after his kind, the ferret, and the teleman, and the lizard, and the snail, and the mole. These are unclean to you among all the creeping, all that creep. Whatsoever doeth touch them, they will be dead and shall be unclean until evening. Right. So again, these different things is what make us unclean, and we should not, eat these things, right? And a lot of our people down south and stuff, they get into all the little squirrels and possums and stuff like that, but we can't do that, right? God told us not to eat those things. So we see we have laws in place, dietarily that can help us health-wise if we keep them, right? And if you notice, I mean, again, like, if we eat those things, we suffer the consequences immediately, but other nations, they can eat those things and it'd be fine. They have to do it excessively to experience health problems from it, right? So, before we get up out of here, we're gonna, where is it? Boom, boom. Let's get a few more real quick. Just a few more. Just really, really quick. So, let's get this. This says Leviticus 19:31. Regard not them that have familiar spirits. So you have these people that be thinking they be talking to spirits, and I be speaking to the spirit, or the spirit be speaking with me, or my person, relative, whatever, right? It says, regard not them that have familiar spirits, because those are demons that people think that they be talking to. It's called familiar spirits, meaning demons can impersonate and take on shapes and form of your loved ones or something that's more familiar to you, right? It says, regard not them that have familiar spirits, neither seek after wizards. So, a lot of our people into witchcraft and, like I said, necromancy and all that, and they want to try to go to the dead and seek for answers. You have people that want to pray to their ancestors and ask their ancestor for help. Let me help you out here. Let me help those out those people out that want to pray to their ancestors. Your ancestors don't know a goddamn thing. That's why they're dead, right? If they knew something, they'll still be here, right? They don't know anything. The Bible says the dead knows nothing, right? Because they're asleep. If you sleep, what you know while you sleep? You don't know what's going on. You wake up like, oh, I didn't know what was going on. I was asleep, right? That's what's going on here, right? Regard not them that have familiar spirits, neither seek after withers to be defiled by them. I am Yahweh your God, right? So we don't, get into all that necromancy, or when people start talking about, they can see spirits or talk to spirits, or, you gotta kind of look at them a little crazy. Like, no, that's not what we're doing over here. Over here, right? Let's jump up. This 19 and 16. Thou shalt not go up and down as a talebearer among thy people. And that's the biggest problem we got amongst our people. Being talebearers, going around spreading rumors about people. Going around, giving unsolicited information about people just to keep up trouble. Being a troublemaker, right? We have a big problem with people being troublemakers amongst us. Thou shalt not go up and down as a talebearer among thy people, neither shalt thou stand against the blood of thy neighbor. I am the Lord. So we should not be coming against each other to do violence or harm, on purpose against your fellow Israelite, right? You should stand up. If you see, injustice, you should do something. But oftentimes we would pile up on that person and, and join the pile on denigrating them, right? Instead, it says, thou shalt not go up and down as a talebearer among thy people, neither shalt thou stand against the blood of thy neighbor, right? So instead of spreading rumors about each other and trying to turn everybody against each other, be like it says right here. It says, thou shalt not hate thy brother in thy heart. So don't be hateful. And that's a hateful act to go around, causing commotion and chaos. Because some people just like to just watch things burn. They like to set the fire and just sit back and watch everybody go crazy, right? It says, thou shalt not hate thy brother in thy heart. Thou shalt in any wise rebuke thy neighbor and suffer not sin upon him. So there's nothing wrong with correcting each other when we see each other going wrong, but do it with love and do not hate each other. And that's the thing. We have a hard time of holding grudges, amongst each other. We always want to get each other back. I got to get this person back. I got to make them feel what I feel, right? Vengeance, right? But it says, thou shalt not hate thy brother in thy heart. And that's what caused a lot of this violence in our community, because we have that hatred. Instead of just talking and working things out, we have emotions that we don't fully know how to navigate. So it comes out anger, right? And then you're dealing with other people that don't fully understand their own emotions. They're getting this energy of anger, so then they respond, because human nature to mimic the emotions of the person you're talking to, right? So it's a reason why somebody would lean over and whisper to you, and then you don't be like, it's not socially acceptable for somebody to whisper to you, and you be like, what you say? You don't do that, right? That's not a sociable, acceptable thing. Usually when somebody whispered to you and you quite didn't hear them, you whisper back. You be like, huh? What'd you say? What was that? What was that? That's what you would do, right? Because we are naturally mimic the conversation we're having with the people that we're talking to, right? So it says, thou shalt not hate thy brother in thy heart. Thou shalt in any wise rebuke thy neighbor and suffer not sin upon him. Thou shalt not avenge nor bear any grudges against the children of thy people, but thou shalt love thy neighbor as thyself. I am the Lord, right? That's how we stop black on black crime. Loving each other as we love ourselves, right? And if you're not going to be harmful to yourself, you're not going to be harmful to the next person, right? And that's how we should look at it. But of course, if we're being told we don't have to keep the law, I mean, why would we read these things? Why would we know this is in here, right? So that's crazy, right? I was trying to see if we can get a few more. But so even okay, last one. I know I said that was it, but last one right here. It says, "If thy brother that dwell by thee wax poor." So you got a family member or a friend or whoever might end up going through some hard times. Maybe they lost their job and they're not able to financially support themselves like they used to. It says, "If thy brother that dwell by thee be waxed poor and be sold unto thee, thou should not compel him as a servant to serve as a bond servant." So let's put this in modern terms, right? So you hooked your guy up, your friend, whoever, with a job. You hooked them up with a job, right? You helped them get back on their feet. You put money in their pocket. But as you're doing it, you're over them. You're being excessive. Like, yeah, I helped you do this. You better not mess up. Don't you mess up my name. And you're just being overbearing to them and making them feel like, damn, I wish this person didn't get me this job. Like, dang, it was better for me not to be working because the way they're acting is worse, than it's worse when I'm not, when I wasn't employed. So it says, "If thy brother that dwell by thee wax poor and be sold unto thee, thou should not compel him as a bond servant." Meaning, if you're helping somebody out and you're helping them out and they need your help, because they need your help, don't mistreat them and be mean and just rude to them because they need you and they're not going to just because they have no other option. So you're going to just be unruly to them. Don't do that, right? If they're working for you, if you say, all right, I'm going to help this person out, I'm going to hire them, so like I said, don't be a unruly boss, employer to them, that's what it means by don't treat them like a slave. Don't act like, because you did them this favor, now they owe you their life, their kids and all that stuff. No, don't be too big-headed and prideful because you're doing nice for somebody. Because that's what people do. They be nice to somebody, then after being nice, they want to curate the environment and make that person understand, hey, I'm being nice to you, right? Hey, look at me. I'm being nice, right? Hey, remember what I just did? Hey, remember that? I'm being nice. Hey, and so that becomes annoying, right? Even if a person is appreciative to what a person is doing. And a lot of times we do that. So it says, "If thy brother dwell by thee, wax poor, and be sold unto thee, thou should not compel him to serve as a bond servant, but as a hired servant, and as a sojourner, he shall be with thee, and shall serve thee unto the year of Jubilee." So, like I said, so you help the man get on his feet. You if you're going to help him, you help him get on his feet. And as you're doing it, you don't make him feel bad for needing your help, right? And if we take it back to the BC days, right? 'Cause I know we modernized it, but we take it back to the BC days. If a person, fall into debt, they need help, then you might hire them because they might have a certain skill that they might be good at. Maybe they're a blacksmith, so you may hire them and you would pay them a working wage, so they can get back on their feet. The whole purpose is not to keep them under you forever, right? That's why it says, and should not compel him to serve as a bond servant. So meaning you're not going to make this person your perpetual slave. Because that's what America does with their loaning system, with their little their debt rand currency thing that they got. They got America Cash Loan all up in the hood. And you borrow money from them. And they can charge you interest, right? And that interest is slavery, in case you don't know. Because you got to pay the principal and then you got to pay the interest, right? So you basically going to pay the principal, then you're working extra to pay that interest off, right? That's what makes you the slave, right? It's the interest part. And so it says, then boom, boom, boom. Let's get them. All right, this one more. It says, and ye shall make no idols nor graven images, neither where this is 26 verse 1. Neither rear you up a standing image, neither shall ye set up any image of stone in your land to bow down unto it, for I am Yahweh your God. So is that something hard, huh? Right. So when they talk about the laws is so you can't do the laws, and we just read a few. Like I said, we didn't not gonna go through all of them, but we just read a few. Did we read anything so mystifying and so mystical that can't be done? Right. Everything we read is something that we can control. Right. So again, hopefully, we understand that there's a difference between what the Bible say and what religion say, right? There's a difference between what pastors say and what God say, right? And all we got to do is read this book and figure it out, right? Because it's right here. And, like I said, keep the faith, keep the faith, the commandments and all that cool stuff, right? And, because it's right here. It's not a secret. It's not something hard that we can't figure out. It's just that we haven't been taught. And then the people that's teaching us is teaching us, hey, no, don't worry about that. Don't do that. We ain't got to worry about that. But you cannot read this book nowhere and it tells you not to keep the law of God. Nowhere. Nowhere, nowhere, nowhere. I know I said that, but this last book of the Bible, right? Last book. Last chapter of the book, right? And it says, what did it say? It start at 13. Last book of the Bible, right? So I ain't lying. Last book of the Bible. This is just, the map. They got the map and stuff back here. And they got a little extra blank paper. So it's the last book, last chapter. And what do it say? Still, what do it say? I am the Alpha and Omega, the beginning and the end, the first and the last. Blessed are they. So who's the blessed? Blessed are they that do his commandments. They may have right to the tree of life. They may enter through the gates of the city. So even in the very last book of the Bible, the very last chapter of the very last book of the Bible, it's still telling us to keep the laws of God. Right? So what are they talking about? That's what we gotta ask. We gotta ask these questions. So I'm gonna say shalom, peace. Hopefully that was edifying. Till next time, be out.